William Ruto, where tonight President William Ruto is going to speak to the nation through the media. 6 media houses are present in State House today, and we are going to be engaging with the President on a number of issues, of course, that affect the country. Mr. President, thank you very much for welcoming us to State House, Nairobi.
Karibuni sana.
Lively place. We've had some water and some tea. Asante sana. We're going to have about 90 or so minutes of a conversation. And I just want to introduce us. We have 6 media houses present tonight. Okay. My name is Eric Latif from Spice FM and KTN, and my colleagues are going to introduce themselves.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening.
Ayub Abdikadir Abdi, Citizen Television and Royal Media Services by extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdi.
Hujambo Rais na hamjambo wa Kenya. Jina langu ni Nancy Okware kutoka kwenye shirika la utangazaji humu nchini KBC.
Hujambo Rais.
Sijambo.
Jina langu ni Daniel Kitu kutoka K24, shirika la Media Max Network Limited.
Thank you, Daniel.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening.
And good evening, Kenyans. My name is Eric Munene from Cape Media, comprising of TV47, Radio 47, and TV47 Digital.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Masalheri Mheshimiwa Rais na Wakenya hamjambo. Mimi naitwa Lofty Matambo kutoka NTV chini ya shirika la Nation Media Group ambalo pia liko na uchapishaji wa magazeti kadhaa ikiwemo Taifa Leo na The Daily Nation. Asante kwa kutualika.
Karibu sana Lofty. That's a very interesting name.
Asante.
He's representing the lofty eye. Mr. President, you look well, and people who've been commenting, one of the first questions that we're told to ask you is, ask the President, what's his exercise regimen, or is it diet?
Well, I have, I had an original, fit that ran amok the last 1.5 years or 2 years because we went into elections. And when you have elections, you have a lot of pressure. Sometimes you take out the pressure on food. And you have to do this and that, and you don't have time to go exercise. And sometimes you eat because you don't know when you will find the next meal. So sometimes you overeat. So I decided to cut it down because ile kibarua niko nae si kidogo. So you need to be alert. Ndio kazi iweze kusonga.
Asante sana. Our first topic for tonight is on the state of the economy, the cost of living, and of course Kenya Kwanza's first budget. My colleague Ayub will take the first question.
Excellency, Mr. President, I want to take you back to what you said on the 26th of July, 2022, during the presidential debate.
Yes.
Before the elections. To quote you said, we can limit the taxation on fuel. Take, for example, VAT, which you said, I think we need to rethink about it. That was the UDA presidential candidate. President William Ruto, months later, is proposing to Parliament to raise it to 16%. Why the double speak, Mr. President?
Thank you very much. Let me start this way. And allow me to give you a bit of context. When I came into office, I did 3 things the first day in my office that I had committed to the people of Kenya. Number 1, I made sure that port operations that were unnecessarily moved from Mombasa were returned. Number 2, I made sure that our police have financial independence. Number 3, I appointed the judges that were supposed to have been appointed, and I committed that I will expand the budget of the judiciary. If you look at the budget this year, we have added an extra 4 billion shillings to the judiciary. When I came into office, I found a huge crisis of fuel. In fact, before even I came here, immediately the results were announced. Amongst the first people to come and see me were oil marketers. And they told me, we are in a crisis. We are going to have a stock out because we cannot have fuel. Government has told us to sell fuel subsidized. but they haven't paid us. The government owes us 65 billion. So that whole subsidy story you hear, it was just a pledge. So I found that we had a 65 billion shilling subsidy to pay. Meanwhile, our financial situation was very bad. And by the way, that subsidy was accumulating at 15 billion shillings every month. I don't know whether you appreciate the magnitude of that. So when I came into office, I looked at it, and the one thing that I did that in retrospect was the right thing, is to have an economic team around me. So we sat down, we went through the numbers, and finally we discovered that there wasn't actually a fuel problem. It was a misdiagnosis. The problem was an economic and much more a dollar problem, because there was fuel that had come, but the oil marketers could not find the dollars to go and buy, because government was maintaining an artificial, rate. So there were two parallel rates. There was dollar by government, which said was 120, and there was another, if you really wanted to buy the dollars, you had to go and get it at 128, thereabout. So what did we do? First, we reinstated, because it was not a fuel issue, we reinstated the interbank forex market. What did that do? The spread that was between 12 and 15% has now shrunk to between 2 and 3 shillings, or difference. That is point number one. Number two, we went and negotiated for credit on all our petroleum products. So we've negotiated 6 months to ease the pressure on the dollar. In fact, many importers were finding it difficult to get dollars to import raw materials. We have since sorted out that problem. The liquidity around the dollar market has improved.
Okay.
We've allowed the dollar to find its own level. We are not artificially managing the exchange rate, because managing it artificially costs us money. So we have an issue there. So when I came into office also, I found that we had commitments of 900 billion Kenya shillings on the roads. Yeah, 900 billion. I have tried to work with the various departments, Kera, Kura, Kenha, to try and understand how do we manage this 900 billion. We've tried to cut it down. We've tried to stop some of the roads that have not started. We've died. But we still remain with close to about 680 billion that we have to manage. If I have to complete these roads, I need extra money to do it. And every place I go, I was yesterday in Nyandarua. Communities, people, leaders tell us, we need a road here, Mr. President, we need a road here. We need to finish the Mau Mau roads. You need to finish this. You need to do this. We need an extra road. They were even telling me there's a road called Kinamba to some place. So that whole equation changed. But what have I done? I have said, yes, we're going to increase the VAT by 8% for two reasons. Number one, because having differential rates, one at 8%, others at 16%, poses a problem, an integrity problem. People use it as a loophole to manipulate numbers, VAT in, VAT out. So the advice that my economic team working with Treasury gave was we must eliminate this loophole that people are exploiting, number one. Number two, this 8% that we are adding is going to give us about 50 billion shillings. It will begin to deal with the problem of roads across the country.
Okay.
But what have I done to balance it out? because I made a commitment that we need to relook, right? I have removed on the same fuel, as we add 8%, I have removed road 3.5% road development levy from fuel. I have removed 2% of IDF on the same fuel. And to balance it out, because it is the same Kenyan who is going to pay from their pocket, I have removed VAT 8% on gas. And I have removed other taxes that I'm going to explain to you, about 10, actually 14 other taxes that I have removed to try and even so that we have a balanced budget.
Okay. We'll talk about the other taxes as proposed in the finance bill, which will come before Parliament. But you have mentioned that there is a team of economic advisors.
You're right.
David Day has been in your campaign team throughout the campaign before the elections. So is the current National Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. When you came to the presidential debate and you made the remarks on the 26th of July, which I quoted you verbatim, I think you said majority of taxes that are in that bracket, 15 almost you said, but we need to integrate at least these 15 different types of taxes. Did they not advise you, or you did not take the advice?
Precisely, if you heard me clearly, there are many other taxes that we have since removed. You know, so you must look at it in context. Yeah? What my economic team advised that time is that we need to relook at these taxes. When we came into government, we found a situation. The country was in a crisis. And by the way, I have had to make very difficult decisions. In fact, coming into office, I had to cancel the borrowing of about 300 billion shillings that the intention was to borrow. That would have taken the country down the cliff. I had to step in and stop many of the subsidies that were being dished left, right, and center. I had to make many changes. I had to reorganize the whole budget because we found a country headed and sliding into bankruptcy. And so when you find that kind of situation, you have to deal with the situation with the urgency and with the acuteness of thinking that is required.
Okay.
Yeah? You don't operate outside a context. So the question that you have asked me, did we remove some? Did we relook at the fuel issue? Yes. We said, while it is true that we have a crisis and we have to deal with a pending bill of 700 billion for the roads that we have, while it is also true that we have to look at what additionally we can do, but we need to put a relief on Kenyans.
Okay.
That's why, apart from, and you know the reason why the tax on the VAT on fuel or petroleum products is much more attractive is because it is spread across all Kenyans. So everybody carries a small bit of it.
Okay.
But we have also knocked down other taxes from the same fuel, as I have told you. IDF we've taken down, road development levy we've taken it down, and a host of other taxes that we have taken down.
Okay. Final question on this. This is an issue, Mr. President, which dates back to 2013 as a condition by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, in which then the leader of the majority party, the current defense CS who sits in cabinet, Adan Duale, said that the 181 MPs have been convinced by the party leadership, the President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, on the rationale of the 8% VAT on petroleum products. He continued, 181 is a very big number and will convince our members. And this being a precautionary facility by the IMF, can you tell the Kenyan people that there is no extra hand of pressure on the Kenyan government by the International Monetary Fund?
my good friend, the International Monetary Fund does not run the government of Kenya. I do. IMF does not make decisions for the government of Kenya. I do. IMF are our partners. They work with us on our priorities. They work with us on our proposals. They support us where they can. They give us advice where they can, but ultimately, we make the decisions ourselves. And it is not up to IMF to see how to sort out the 680 billion that we have on the road sector. It is not up to any other person. It is up to us. When I get out of this office and go to this village and that constituency and that ward, it is not the IMF that is asked about roads. It is the government of Kenya that I run. So I think there is always this thinking that external factors dictate to us. I think you know me better. Mm-hmm. I can stand up to any pressure from any corner. Mm-hmm. I make the right decisions for our country.
Your Excellency, you've said, and this is not just today, even previously, that the Jubilee handshake administration went on an irresponsible borrowing spree. They took loans worth 4.1 trillion shillings in just the 5 years of 2018 to 2022. How much is our public debt today, Mr. President?
Our public debt is in the region of 8.8 trillion, close to 9 trillion. That's where we are. And so that you can contextualize this, it is the reason why, if you look at this budget, I have made a deliberate, conscious decision. In fact, against the advice of IMF. IMF actually wanted us to borrow slightly more. I told them no. I told them no, we're not borrowing. And that is why, if you look at the fiscal deficit, the money we are borrowing, we have reduced it from 1.1 trillion last year to 630 billion this year. We have reduced almost 500 billion because I am conscious that we are not in a good place. I am also aware what is happening to other countries. There are countries in our continent that have defaulted in their payments. When I am president, Kenya will not go that route. And that is why, even when, many people thought it was a joke, I told them, we are not borrowing beyond where we are.
So how much are you planning to borrow in this year?
That is why, Latif, you saw there was a delay of salaries for about 2-3 days, in April.
Yep. Yes.
Because, some characters thought that I was joking. I told them, listen, we are going to live within our means. Even if we have to delay for salaries for 2-3 days, we will. So that people begin to internalize that we cannot continue borrowing. And let me tell you, I have had many people say, you can't tax there is no country that can tax itself into prosperity. That's correct. Yeah? But you cannot accumulate debt into bankruptcy as an option. It cannot be an option, right? And there is a question I want to ask my fellow countrymen and women. Are we overtaxed? That is the question that we need to ask. And I want to answer that question. Yeah. Are Kenyans overtaxed? Let me give you the statistics. OECD countries, the tax as a percentage of GDP, the average is 34% of GDP, 34%. You have from Turkey, which is 22% of GDP, to France, which is 45% of GDP. Okay? Let's leave the OECD. Let us come to our continent. Our peers, South Africa, Tunisia, Morocco. They are between 23 and 28% of GDP. Tax as a percentage of GDP. Where is Kenya? Kenya is at 14%. Kenya is at 14%, meaning we are paying half in terms of tax what our peers in our continent are paying. And you see, society is reflected by the quality of public goods, roads, hospitals, schools, water. That is what a society is measured. If you will find that if you don't have working schools, if you don't have no running water, if you don't have good roads, you cannot, what kind of society are you? So the big question, and I want to tell my countrymen and women, please, we are not overtaxing ourselves. In fact, if we were to match our peers, my intention is to take this slowly, the way Mwai Kibaki did. When Mwai Kibaki came into office, we were collecting about 220 billion. By the time he was leaving in 10 years, we were collecting almost $1 trillion. He had moved it 4 times, right?
Yep.
Now we are at 14. If you look at the budget this year, I want to move it from 14 to 16% of GDP. By God's grace, maybe next year, 18, maybe like that.
Yeah.
Because we have to be realistic, you know? If we do not pay taxes, we cannot be like the countries we want to be. We want to be in their shoes. We will be going backwards. So the real cardinal, because, and I want to tell my good friends, you know, it's good to have information. Because I hear many people are saying, oh, you know, we are being overtaxed. The real issue is that our tax as a percentage of GDP, if we manage to get this finance bill through, we will move from 14 to 16. We will still be way below what our peers are.
I want to come back onto the issue of debt because, I mean, it's also influencing how much you want to spend in the next financial year and raising revenue to repay this debt. 1.2 trillion shillings, if I'm not wrong, is our debt bill in the next financial year. And if you just look at how much we are paying in terms of debt, and then you look back at that close to 9 trillion shillings that has been borrowed in the last 10, 15 years, questions are, where has that money gone? And so I want to ask you, Mr. President, do you feel that the money that has been borrowed has actually gone to be value for Kenyans?
I do not want to point fingers at no administration. I do not want to say what happened in the last administration. I have said enough of it. I just want to speak to the present and to the future. And I want to tell my countrymen and women that I want to be held to account. I am ready. That is why I believe in accountability. For the first time, I am the one who pushed for the change of standing orders so that ministers of my administration can go to Parliament and ask questions because we want accountability. As we talk, I am pushing so that we have an office in Parliament of the Leader of Opposition funded by the government of Kenya to make sure that public resources are being used appropriately.
And I like what you're saying.
That is exactly what I want because I want, as I collect taxes, as the people of Kenya contribute their money as taxes, they must be put to good use. They should not be put in projects like the BBI. Okay. They should not be put in projects like the Azimio thing. They must be put in tangible projects that make a difference in the lives of the people.
So with that then, Mr. President, are you prepared in your administration to publish the debt register? Because this is one thing that even the previous parliaments have tried to push. It hasn't been published. To date, we know the figure, we don't know the details. Are you prepared to publish the debt register, audit the debt register, and to hold anybody accountable for any money that may have been borrowed and misappropriated?
Why not?
When will this happen?
Why not? You know, we have, in fact, we already have a bill in Parliament, for purposes of placing on record any borrowing that is done by the government of Kenya. It must be borrowing that is made available so that the people of Kenya who ultimately have to pay must hold government to account, that we are borrowing this money for this purpose, for this purpose, for this purpose. I have explained in this budget the 630 billion which we have to borrow beyond our taxes. I have laid it clearly on how are we going to use it. Where is it going to go? It is not going to go to recurrent budget. It is not going to pay debts. It is going to be invested in production, in making sure that we have fertilizer for our farmers. We have developed the tea value chain, the coffee value chain, leather value chain, textile value chain, edible oil value chain. And if you look at the budget, we have clearly isolated, including making sure that we begin the journey to bring our manufacturing as a percentage of GDP, which went down from 9 to 7, in the next 5 years, I want it to be at 15%. By 2030, I want manufacturing as a percentage of our GDP to be at 20%. That's why we are calling it 20 by 30. That is the trajectory I want us to go. I also want to move our exports. That's why, if you see in this budget, we have many areas where we have imposed taxes. We have imposed taxes on imported fish. We have imposed taxes on imported furniture. We've imposed taxes on imported steel. We have imposed taxes on imported cement because we want to grow our own manufacturing capacity. Because by growing our own manufacturing capacity, we create jobs, we create opportunities for work, and we build our own manufacturing capacity using our own products. So I have, with clarity, I can explain where we are going to put every cent. How we are going to invest in the leather value chain.
Mr. President,
how we are going to invest in the textile value chain.
Nafikiri kwa kufungamana na swali lake nitakuuliza Kiswahili na nitafurahia hapo utalijibu hili Kiswahili. Wakenya wengi wanahisi kwamba Mheshimiwa Rais unazungumza lugha ya mahasla, lakini vitendo vyako na vya serikali yako ni vya mabwenyenye. Hasa ukiangalia katika matumizi. Kwa mfano, ni wiki kadhaa tu, miezi kadhaa iliyopita ilipitishwa kwamba kuna nyongeza ya pesa ambazo zitatumika katika Ikulu, shilingi milioni 93 nyongeza. Ulipokuwa unaingia katika madaraka ulisema kitu cha kwanza utakata bajeti kwa shilingi bilioni 300. Na hii ilikuwa ni kwamba ujaribu kupunguza matumizi ili Mkenya ambaye ni hasla uliyezungumza kwamba ukiweka Biblia chini tu hivi, ikiwa ni tarehe 11 Septemba mwaka jana kabla uapishwe, utaziba mashimo yote ya makateli na kila kitu kitakuwa shwari. Lakini swali ambalo leo Mkenya anajiuliza ni kwamba hakuna pesa ya kuweza kuwaajiri walimu zaidi, haswa wa shule sekondari junior ambao sasa hivi kuna upungufu wa karibia 1048. Hakuna pesa ya kulipa madaktari kwa wakati ufaao. Kaunti ya mwisho kutaka kugoma ni kaunti ya Kisumu. Hakuna pesa ya kuongeza fedha haswa katika kaunti. Kumbuka kwamba ni maseneta wako katika ambao wanaegemea upande wa Kenya Kwanza waliangusha ule mswada wa kuongeza fedha hadi kufikia shilingi bilioni 407, wakaishukisha hadi 385. Hakuna pesa za hivi, lakini kuna pesa shilingi milioni 459 za kulipa makatibu waandamizi CAS 50 kwa kila mwaka katika serikali yako. Je, unazungumza lugha ya mahasla ama unawapaka mafuta kwa mgongo wa chupa Rais?
Sizungumzi lugha ya mahasla peke yake. natekeleza hii budget. Hii budget unaona hapa ni budget ya mahasla. Uniulize kwa jinsi gani?
Kwa nini?
Yes.
Na nilichokitaja ni tofauti na unachosema.
Jambo la kwanza, haya mambo yote uliyoyasema, serikali hii wakati nimeingia nimefanya mambo manne ambayo yanahusikana na mahasla. Jambo la kwanza, nimeweka pesa karibu shilingi bilioni 3.5 kupunguza gharama ya mbolea ambayo inatumika na wakulima wale wa chini. Kufikia sasa, serikali imesajili wakulima milioni 4.5, karibu milioni 5. For the first time, kila mkulima bila ya kubaguliwa alipata mbolea. Leo tumeongeza sehemu ya kuzalisha chakula kwa ekari 1,200 kwa sababu ya incentive ambayo tumetoa kama serikali. Mind you, wale wengi ambao wako katika sekta ya kilimo ni mahasla. Jambo la pili, kwa jambo la ambalo linasumbua sana wa Kenya, jambo la cost of living. Yeah. Ni nini nimefanya katika ile kupunguza hiyo mzigo kwa Wakenya? Kwa sababu kuna mambo mawili. Wale majamaa walikuwa hapa mbele yetu walifanya subsidy ile inaitwa subsidizing consumption. Walipeleka pesa kwa mamila. Mila hana mahindi yake. Mila ni chuma tu ako nayo na mashini. Zile pesa mimi sasa ndio nalipa. Hawakulipa. Mimi sasa ndio nalipa ile pesa ya subsidy. Unaelewana? Mimi nilifanya nini? Kwa sababu naelewa kwamba shida ni supply and demand. So ile tulifanya ni kwamba tulienda kwa KNTC, tukawapatia Treasury ikawapatia letter of support. KCB wakatupatia shilingi bilioni 25. Tukatumia hiyo pesa, sio pesa yetu, ni pesa LC, unapatiwa tu LC. Tukalete mchele, tukaongeza mahindi, tukaongeza mchele, tukaongeza maharagwe, tukalete mafuta ya kupikia. What happened? Ile bei ya unga ilikuwa 230, sasa hii iko 170, ikiteremka. Bei, nataka uende ucheck. Bei ya mafuta ya kupikia fresh fry kwa mfano ilikuwa 1,800, sasa hii ni 1,100 kwa kilo 5. Ile kilo 3 ilikuwa 1,100, sasa hii ni 750. Sababu gani? Wale makatel ambao walikuwa wanafanya hiyo biashara, wakati walijua, kwa sababu tunajua bei ya hizi vitu kwa soko ya kimataifa, tukawaambia simupunguzeni jameni. Wao sasa wamekuja bei ya chini. No. Without us doing much.
Nafikiria hiyo ni mipango mizuri.
Sasa nikueleze. Si umeniuliza nafanya nini kwa mahasla. Mahasla ndio hawa wanahangaika na gharama ya.
Swali lao kuu mahasla wanasema jinsi unavyokusanya na matumizi yako hayatoi picha ya hasla. Kwa mfano kuachilia kuongezwa fedha ambazo zinatumika ikuluni.
Nitarudi hapo.
Na mshahara kama hawa ma-CAS ambao hadi sasa hujazungumzia kama unakubaliana au la, licha watu kwenda mahakamani kupinga hilo.
Mambo ya CAS ni mpango wangu wa serikali.
Naam.
Yeah. It is my decision. Ya kwamba mimi naona ya kwamba kuna sababu ya wale ma-CAS kuweko. Kwa sababu agenda nilio nayo kusukuma Kenya hii. Leo naibu wangu karibu analala kwa ofisi. Leo yule Musalia Mudavadi unaona amepunguza kilo siku hizi kwa sababu karibu analala kwa ofisi. Mimi ninahitaji wafanyikazi zaidi kwa sababu ile agenda ya kubadilisha Kenya, I need more hands, I need more minds. Lakini wacha nirudi pale kwa mahasla. Wewe umesema ya kwamba ati mambo ya walimu. Je, wewe unaelewa ya kwamba serikali hii imeajiri walimu 35,000 yenye haijawahi tangu Kenya iundwe? There has never been one hiring of 35,000 teachers.
Lakini wanasema bado JSS madarasani hakuna walimu. Ni tamu moja sasa wanafunzi waliingia hawajapata walimu hadi sasa.
We are hiring another 35,000 next year, next financial year, baada ya hii budget. Kwa sababu mimi naelewa, na hii shortage ya walimu, kulikuwa na shortage ya walimu 1,110. Mimi nikichukua wadhifa wa uongozi. At least nimejaribu kupunguza hiyo shortage ya walimu. Hire the biggest number of teachers in Kenya. As I talk to you, vile tumeajiri walimu wa TVET 1,300, tutaajiri baada ya hii budget another 1,700 wawe 3,000. Serikali hii tumesort out mambo ya elimu vipi? Wakati tumechukua usukani, walimu watoto wetu walikuwa wanahangaika, hawajui watafanya mtihani ama watafanya mtihani. Hii junior secondary itakuwa katika secondary school ama itakuwa primary school. We have sorted out that problem. And on top of sorting out that problem, na tumeweka junior secondary school pale katika primary school, kwa sababu ingekuwa mzigo mkubwa sana kama pendekezo ya serikali iliyopita kwamba waende katika secondary school, ingekuwa gharama kubwa sana kwa wazazi.
Naam.
Vile tumeongeza walimu. Juzi, nafikiri wiki moja iliyopita, tumesort out the biggest problem ya mambo ya elimu ya vyuo zetu. The biggest vyuo zetu, nikiongea na wewe saa hizi, karibu zote zinafungwa. Wako na madeni ya bilioni 59, actually almost 60 billion. Wana strike. Wale wahadhiri ama lecturers wamegoma, hawajalipwa. Nani hajalipwa? It has taken my administration to sort out, kwa sababu wale wote wamekuwa wakimbia kutoka changamoto hiyo kwa miaka 20. But I want to tell you, we have put our education system now on sound footing. We have sorted out the JS, the junior secondary
as a topic by itself. So please, if
okay.
you don't mind.
All right.
Na Mheshimiwa Rais, kidogo ni kurejeshe nyuma kuhusiana na hili swala la mapendekezo yaliomo kwenye ule mswada wa fedha wa mwaka 2023, na kuna hili swala ambalo Wakenya wamekuwa na maswali chungu nzima kuhusiana na mpango wa kutoa 3% kwa ule mpango wa kujenga nyumba za bei nafuu. Wakenya wanauliza ni kwa nini wanalazimishwa, manake wengine wanaona ni kana kwamba wanalazimishwa, pengine hawako tayari kuwa wamiliki wa nyumba. Wengine wanasema ya kwamba hawakuhusishwa kabla ya yale mapendekezo. Na tumeshuhudia miungano mbalimbali ya wafanyikazi ikisema ya kwamba ikiwa mapendekezo hayo yatapitishwa, basi kutakuwa na migomo.
Ni swali nzuri sana umeniuliza, kwa sababu ni swali ambalo nimekuwa nikingojea kujibu. Nataka Wakenya wanisikize kwa makini. Niko na maswali matatu ambayo sisi kama Wakenya lazima tujiulize. Jambo la kwanza, ni kwa sababu gani watoto wetu, vijana wa taifa letu la Kenya milioni 5 wanahangaika barabarani, wanazunguka madukani, hawana ajira? Swali la kwanza. Swali la pili, ni kwa sababu gani taifa letu la Kenya iko na vitongoji duni, slums, 1141? Wakenya milioni 6, ndugu yangu Abdi, milioni 6 wanaishi katika vitongoji duni. Hakuna maji, hakuna choo, hakuna barabara. Kenya yetu hii milioni 6. Why? Jambo la tatu, ni kwa sababu gani katika taifa letu la Kenya hakuna nyumba mwananchi wa kawaida anaweza kununua? Nyumba yote ile iko bei chini sana, milioni 5. Mortgage 60,000. Wakenya wangapi wanaweza kulipa mortgage ya 60,000? Jambo la 4, wale watu ambao wanafanya kazi, sisi tunaolipwa na ushuru ya Wakenya. ni watu 700,000 kuanzia rais mpaka kupitia kwa mawaziri, kupitia kwa madaktari, kupitia kwa walimu, kupitia kwa wauguzi, mpaka wale wa chini messengers na wale wengine 700,000. Yeah? Tunalipwa na ushuru ya hao Wakenya wote. Imefika wakati, rafiki yangu, tufikirie ni vipi sisi tulio na bahati ya kufanya kazi, na sio kwamba ati mimi kwa sababu ni rais leo ati mimi ni bora kuliko wengine, ama wewe kwa sababu ni mwalimu ati wewe ni bora kuliko wale wengine. Ile kazi mimi nafanya kama rais, na ile kazi mwalimu anafanya, na ile kazi daktari anafanya, kuna Wakenya zaidi ya 5,000, 6,000 wanaweza kufanya hiyo kazi. Wewe umebahatika, wewe ndio uko na hiyo kazi, na ndio kwa sababu wale wengine hawana hiyo kazi. So ile swali lazima tuulizane ni kwamba mpango ambao utatupatia sisi nafasi ya kuajiri watoto wetu, ya kutoa aibu ya hawa watoto wetu wanahangaika barabarani, wanahangaika madukani, ndio wale wameingia kwa ulevi, ndio wale wameingia kwa madawa, ni nini tutafanya? Na ndio niliwaeleza Wakenya wakati nilienda kwa campaign. Niliwaambia Wakenya, nchi zingine, China, Singapore, Korea, ile wamefanya, wameweka mipango katika labor intensive infrastructure programs. Many of them wameweka mpango katika mambo ya housing. So, hii housing sio nyumba. Naona watu wengi wanasumbuka, sisi hatutaki nyumba bana. Mbona nani alikuambia tunahitaji nyumba? You know? Sio nyumba peke yake ndio tunatafuta kwa hii mpango. Ni kweli nyumba itapatikana, tuondoe wale wa Kenya 6.5 wanaishi katika slums. Ni kweli. Lakini wacha tafadhali. Lakini ya muhimu zaidi ni kwamba kila nyumba tunayojenga tunapata ajira ya vijana wetu 5. Kila nyumba. Zile nyumba ambazo tumeweka katika mpango yetu 1 million in the next 5 years. 200,000 every year. Hizo nyumba 200,000 every year itatupatia nafasi ya ajira kati ya vijana 1,000,000 na 2,000,000. Ndio tumesema vile wengine wamefanya. Tunasema kila mfanyikazi atoe 3%. Na sio 3% ya mshahara yako yote. Ile inaitwa basic pay. Mwalimu kwa mfano, basic pay pengine ni 30,000. Sawa? Shilingi 3% ni shilingi 900. Right? Na hatusemi hiyo 900 ati ni ushuru. Si ushuru, ni pesa yako. Lakini unatupatia kwa muda tufanyie mpango ya wale watoto wetu wanaorandaranda barabarani, wengine wao ni watoto wetu wa kuwazaa, our own children, kuwapangia ajira. Sawa? Na hiyo that's why ni watu waelewe, it is a win-win project. Wewe ukitoa 3%, Abdi, mwenye amekuajiri anatoa 3%. Kumaanisha, na hiyo 6% yote ni pesa yako. Sio pesa ya mwajiri tena, ni pesa yako. Na sio ushuru, ni pesa yako. Tunaelewana? Na hiyo pesa ndio tunataka kutumia kujenga hazina ambayo itatusaidia kufanya mambo 3 ya muhimu. Jambo la kwanza, leo tunajenga nyumba 1%, 1% ya nyumba zote zinajengwa Kenya inaweza kununuliwa na mwananchi wa kawaida. Tunataka kuongeza nyumba ambazo zinajengwa ambazo zinaweza kununuliwa na Mkenya wa kawaida kutoka 1% mpaka 50%. Wacha niwaeleze Wakenya vile hiyo kazi itafanyika. Tuko na mipango miwili. Tuko na yenye tunaita social housing. Tuko na ingine tunaita affordable housing. Social housing ni kwa wale watu wa mapato yao ya chini. Tunasema yule mtu ambaye anaishi Kibera, yule mtu ambaye anaishi Mathare, yule mtu ambaye anaishi Kisumu Kondele, yule mtu ambaye anaishi hapo Kakamega ama anaishi Murang'a ama anaishi Kiambu, ambaye analipa rent kwa ile nyumba ambayo haina choo, haina taa, haina maji, shilingi 2,500. Huyo mtu na 2,500 yake tunataka kumjengea nyumba, atalipa shilingi 2,500 kwa nyumba ambayo iko na maji, nyumba ambayo iko na facilities, iko na kitchen, iko na choo, na analipa shilingi 2,500. Wakenya watataka kuniuliza, Bwana Hasla, hiyo nyumba iko wapi? Nataka munipatie nafasi niwapeleke hapa Soweto.
Okay.
Kibra. Soweto A. Pale kuna kiongozi ya wamama, kuna kiongozi ya hiyo Soweto A anaitwa Mama Shiro. Alikuwa anaishi kwa nyumba haina choo, haina maji. Leo anaishi kwa nyumba ambayo analipa 2,500 na ni nyumba ya ghorofa. Hako kwa flat yake. So, what am I saying, my friend? I am saying, kwa wale ndugu zetu, we have a duty. Kwa sababu wengi wao wanauliza kusema, how is it my business? Inanihusu nini? Kama yule hana kazi, inanihusu nini? Kama anaishi kwa slum, inanihusu nini? My friends, mimi nataka niwaambie, inakuhusu kwa sababu yule unamdharau ndio analipa ushuru, wewe ukapata mshahara. Number 1. Number 2, yule ambaye unamdharau, huyo pengine ni ndugu yako, pengine ni dada yako, ama ni Mkenya mwenzako. Jambo la 3, hasara yako ni nini? Kwa sababu ukitoa 900 kama ni mwalimu, tunakuongezea 900 kama serikali, kama mwajiri wako. Ya? Usipotoa 900 hatukupi 900. Lakini ukitoa 900 tunakupatia 900. Alafu kama huhitaji nyumba, baada ya muda miaka 7 ama ukitaka kwenda retire, tunakurudishia pesa yako kama hujatumia kununua nyumba, na tunaongeza interest. Kama unataka kutumia kwa njia nyingine, unaweza kumpatia mtoto wako akatumia kununua ile nyumba.
Okay. Well,
affordable, acha niende hapo kwa affordable housing. Kidogo tu tafadhali.
Okay, briefly, we need to proceed also.
Tafadhali.
Okay, thank you.
Kwa sababu unajua hii maswali ni mingi.
Yeah.
Watu wengi wanasema, lakini bwana, hii sasa hata kama ni 900, si nitachukua miaka 60 ndio niweze kununua nyumba. That is not the case. Hii pesa ambayo unatoa sio ya wewe kununua nyumba. Pale tukishajenga manyumba ya kutosha ambaye wewe unaweza kugharimu kwa ile mshahara yako, tunajenga nyumba ya 2,500, 4,600, 8,000. Ile the most expensive house tunajenga ni karibu 12,000, 3 bedroom house. So tunasema hivi, ile pesa ambayo tunaweka pamoja ni kutupatia uwezo ya kuleverage kwa hiyo pesa. Kama ni bilioni 5, tunaweza kuitengeneza kiuchumi iwe mara 5, mara 7, tuweze kuitumia kujenga manyumba. Hii manyumba itatusaidia kwa wale wanaishi katika vitongoji na hata wale wengine wote ambao wanalipa rent. Badala ya kulipa rent, wewe utaingia kwa nyumba ambayo badala ya kulipa rent utalipa mortgage.
Okay, Mr. President.
Unaelewana?
Yep.
Wacha nimalizie tu kidogo. Okay. Huyu jamaa anasema sasa mimi nalipa rent saa hii ya 5,000 na nakatwa 900. Itakuwaje? Kama unaweza kulipa rent 5,000, mbona usilipe mortgage 500 ndio nyumba iko yako? Iko dhambi gani? Na katika hiyo harakati, number 1, umesaidia nchi yako. Umesaidia wale jamaa hawana kazi, lakini wanatusaidia kulipa ushuru, ndio mshahara yetu. Mimi kama rais, na wewe kama daktari, na wewe kama mwalimu, na wewe kama mjumbe, na wewe kama MCA ilipwe. Pia tuwasaidie wapate ajira, tuwasaidie wapate mahali pa kuishi, na jambo la tatu tuhakikisha kwamba mashamba yetu ambayo kwa sasa yanakatwa ili wananchi waishi, we start to consolidate our position kama townships. In any case, statistics show, my brothers and sisters, that the future is urban. By 2050, 68% of people will be living in towns. So we have a choice. Are they coming to live in slums when they come to, because they will come?
Okay.
Or are they going to live in decent houses?
Thank you. Mr. President.
And if they are going to live in decent houses, we have to engage in this win-win program.
Okay,
in this program, just allow me 1 minute. In this program, because it is very important to me, and it is very important to every Kenyan, and I want every Kenyan to understand why they have to contribute 3% of their salary. It is not that it is a tax. It is your money, my good people.
Okay.
And we are going to double that money using your employer. And you are going to get that money with interest. And you are going to support us. You are going to help us to employ the millions of young people, including your sons and daughters, in give them
time for the questions now.
And Mr. President, you have a very ambitious plan.
Thank you.
The housing plan. My question is, are you saying that those lucky enough to secure jobs will be contributing to this fund so that you cushion the most vulnerable in the society? We have millions of jobless Kenyans out there. Don't you think theirs could be an earning problem and not a saving problem? Because now, if you say
theirs is
an earning problem,
yes,
not a saving problem. So even if you make these houses very, very affordable, some of them cannot even afford that 2,500. And then my question too on that, if I'm already paying for mortgage, why should I be forced to contribute to the fund?
Very good question. If you are paying a mortgage, nothing stops you as somebody who is employed. Yeah? Number one, contributing to this fund. Because it is not a tax. It is your money. What you are doing, you are playing your patriotic duty. Because out there, we have millions of young people who get out of school every year. It is our responsibility, me and you. Why is it our responsibility? Because they are the taxpayers that end up paying our salaries, right? And it is our duty also to see how we can help them in a small way. And you have said correctly that their problem is employment. Precisely. That's why I'm saying these 5 million characters, our children, getting out of school. Don't you think it is a decent thing? Don't you think it is the right thing to participate in an exercise that helps our country, our young people, instead of engaging in crime, in abuse of drugs, to be part, to get a job? By the way, in the last 8 months, 8 months, I have launched the construction of 36,000 housing units in Kenya. Yeah? I went to Homa Bay. Last Friday, I was in South B here at the Bellevue, where they are building, I think, 2,000-something houses. I will be going to Makongeni, hopefully in the next maybe 3-4 weeks or 1 month, to launch another 30,000 houses. The 36,000 units, there are close to 100,000 young people today working in those sites. Engineers, quantity surveyors, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, masons, all manner of people, including the women who sell food. Okay. It is a whole ecosystem. I was very amazed in South B. A group of women were saying, sisi tunaitwa protein. Sisi ndio tutakuwa tunauza chakula hapa. Bwana President, tunataka uhakikisha kwamba hii watu wasilete watu wengine. Because you see, it is a whole ecosystem. And I want to ask my countrymen and women, those of us who are employed, please, let us not hold in contempt those who don't have jobs or those who are not.
You say it's not a tax.
It is not a tax.
What is it?
It is a contribution you are making, because if it was a tax, tax, it goes one way. You never get it. This is not a tax.
Okay,
Because
why
it is your money.
Okay, why then, Mr. President, if it's not a tax, if that bill hypothetically say is passed by the National Assembly, it's legally binding?
Yeah, of course.
It's not a tax, you said.
It is not a tax.
Why would I contribute? And if I don't want?
That's what the law says.
But why are you passing it?
Yeah, the question I'm asking you is, are you saying, Abdi, that you don't think it is your business to contribute to the employment of the unemployed Kenyans?
Okay, it's the responsibility.
It is
of
not
the
your
Kenyan
business.
government. Okay, hang on, Mr. President.
Who is Kenyan government? Kenyan government is me and
hang on,
you.
Mr. President. You saw the mandate of the Kenyan people.
Exactly.
There is a we can't represent all of us.
Yes.
I worked hard for my money.
Yes.
You said it's not tax. But there is a bill in Parliament. If it's passed, it's legally binding. Why would I make a contribution for others to succeed? It's your business as the government. You are the head of state. You have the responsibility. You have the mandate.
That's why the Constitution gives me the power to tax.
But it's you who is leading
And
the
that's
government.
why the Constitution gives me the power to sign things into law.
But okay.
So I am simply doing my job.
Mr. President, let's get the specifics very clear.
Yeah.
It's a very simple issue.
Yes.
You are saying it's not a tax.
It is not a tax.
That's the commander-in-chief saying.
Yes, it
Okay.
is not a tax.
Hang on, let's go step by step.
Yes,
There is a bill that will come before Parliament.
absolutely.
Hypothetically, let's say it's passed. If it's not a tax, why would I contribute?
Because it is the law.
The law, Mr. President.
Once it is passed, it is the law.
Okay, meaning then it's a tax, and you understand it's a tax.
Yeah, once it is passed, it is the law, and you have to contribute. Let me ask you.
One rider, Mr. President.
Let me ask you. Just allow me. Let me ask you, Abdi. Do you know that today you contribute 6% of your salary to NSSF?
Correct.
Why? It is not a tax.
Mr. President.
Okay, hang on.
On that,
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
Okay, hang
because
on,
it is
Mr.
the law.
The issue, though.
There is the NHIF question, Mr. President.
Yes.
Which you have passionately talked about.
I am very passionate about it.
Which is still, again, because you have cherry-picked on the NSSF, but there's the NHIF component, which I still pay for.
Yes.
You pay for as well.
Yes.
But then what's the point of contributing to the NHIF program, yet I go to the hospital and I only get paid for the bed?
Precisely. That is why I want to make NHIF work. You know how I'm going? I'm working on it, by the way. It is in the works, and it will be part of this exercise. What I have done on NHIF, and I have a good history, long history with NHIF. When we came into office in 2013, there were only about 3 million contributors on NHIF. And by the way, NHIF works. I was in Thika, Kenyatta Referral Hospital.
Teaching and Referral Hospital.
Teaching and Referral Hospital. And the doctors there spoke about NHIF in a way that inspired me. How NHIF has helped many people who would otherwise have not been able to get medical service. What I'm doing with NHIF is exactly what I said. And by the way, Hussein.
Ayub,
Ayub Abdi. By the way, this housing plan, I talked about it in the campaign everywhere. And I promised the people of Kenya, if you elect me president, this housing thing, I am going to use it to get jobs for our young people and to remove Kenyans from slums. So it is not something that I arrived in office and I started. If you read the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza, it is a big chapter. In fact, I was asking some of the MPs that were trying to say, oh, I asked them, when me and you were standing on the podium and told the people of Kenya, elect us, we are going to arrange for housing so that you thought it was a joke. It was not a joke.
Na Mheshimiwa Rais, tukisalia katika...
that's where we are, Abdi. Hapo ndio tuko.
Okay.
Na Mheshimiwa Rais, tukisalia katika swala hili la gharama ya maisha, lakini katika mada tofauti.
Ndio.
Umezungumza kuhusu kuondoa ushuru kwa gesi. Na mwezi Februari uliwaambia Wakenya kwamba itakapofika tarehe mosi mwezi Juni, bei ya gesi ya mtungi wa kilo 6 itapungua kati ya shilingi 300 na 500. Hivi sasa Wakenya wanasubiri siku 15 kutoka sasa wanataka kufahamu iwapo mipango yote iko line, ikifika tarehe 1 mwezi Juni watakapoenda katika maduka haya ya kununua gesi wataipata gesi hii kwa kati ya shilingi 300 na 500.
Lazima kwanza tupitishe hii kwa budget. Sio lazima tutoe gharama ya tuondoe. Kwa sasa hakuna njia ya kuondoa ushuru mpaka budget ipite.
Kwa hivyo huwezi kuhakikisha kwamba ikifika tarehe 1 Juni.
Tarehe 1 Juni haiwezekani. Mpaka pengine
kama ulivyosema awali.
Mpaka tutapitisha hii mswada pale bunge ndio tuweze kuhakikisha kwamba tunateremsha hiyo bei.
Kwa hivyo ni muhimu kwamba Wakenya kuna mabadiliko.
Kuongeza kwa kama tungepitisha hii jambo kwa supplementary budget. June ingewezekana. Lakini tulijaribu kuisukuma kwa supplementary budget, ikawa haiwezekani kwa sababu ilikuwa inatubidi tubadilishe sheria fulani. Ndio tuhakikisha kwamba hilo tendo inafanyika. Sasa tumeipanga vizuri. Tumehakikisha ya kwamba hiyo iko katika budget yetu, umeona waziwazi. Na vile vile tumesema tutachukua ile pesa ambayo tunatumia tunaokota ushuru kutoka mambo ya kerosene. Tutaitumia kusecuritize. Ndio tupunguze gharama ya mtungi ya gesi. In fact, tunaongea na market. Saa hizi nikiongea na nyinyi, tunakimbizana na wale watu wakora ambao wanauza gas kinyume ya sheria. Tunakimbizana na hawa vibaya sana. Kwa sababu we have to remove all the illegal fillers because they are destroying this market and they are undermining our efforts.
Na unaweza kuhakikishia Wakenya kwamba
budget tukipitisha, tutapunguza gharama ya gesi
kati ya shilingi 300 na 500 kwa mtungi.
Kwanza mtungi, wacha gas. Ile tunapunguza kati ya shilingi 300 na 500 ni mtungi yenyewe. Ndio sasa uongeze gesi ndani yake.
Lakini mheshimiwa, ukiwa Samburu, nakumbuka vizuri sana ulipotoa tangazo la kwanza, tena baadaye katika ukumbi wa mikutano ya kimataifa na akina mama hapa KICC, hukutaja masuala ya kwamba lazima mswada wa fedha wa mwaka 2023 upite kwanza. Ulitangaza tu waziwazi kwamba utapunguza na itakuwa ni hewala kwa kila Mkenya.
Sasa mimi nataka nikuulize wewe, hii ni nchi ambayo inafuata sheria. Si umesikia huyu bwana akiniuliza ni kwa sababu gani? We are a country governed by the rule of law. Nimekueleza. Kama tungepitisha hiyo mswada kutumia supplementary budget, mwezi wa 6 ingewezekana. Lakini kwa sababu hatukupitisha, tutapitisha sasa katika budget yenyewe. Baada ya hapo hiyo gesi itapatikana.
Kutokana na mabadiliko haya utaomba Wakenya radhi?
Kwa nini?
Ambao walikuwa wanategemea kwamba ikifika
tarehe mosi wewe ndio uko na shida na mimi. Wakenya hawana shida.
Okay, Mr. President, let's finish up on
this. I'd like us to move to the next issue, Mr. President. Thank you very much. We've spent quite a bit of time on the first topic.
Yes.
Because of course it's the hot topic in the country. Let's go to another hot topic, Mr. President. And this is on the matter of security and religious matters. Lofty.
Shukran sana. Mheshimiwa Rais, swali la kwanza kuhusiana na masuala ya usalama wa taifa ni kiazi moto na donda ndugu ambalo limechipuka katika eneo la Malindi kule Shakahola katika msitu ule wa Chakama. Kufikia sasa ama kufikia jana, tangazo lilotolewa ni kwamba iliripotiwa Wakenya 610 hivi hawajulikani waliko. Wakenya 201 na zaidi wamefariki, wengi wao wakiwa ni watoto. Na swala hili si geni ama halikuchipuka tu mwezi jana ambapo wanahabari walitangaza, lakini mhusika mkuu ambaye ni Paul Mackenzie alipoondoka Furunzi Malindi kuelekea Shakahola ulikuwa mwaka 2019, mwaka 2020 Mheshimiwa Rais, mwaka 2021 serikali kimya, mwaka 2023 hadi wanahabari walipotangaza, na maafa ndio haya. Wewe kama amiri jeshi mkuu ambaye unakaa katika kamati ya usalama na kupewa kinachoendelea na ujasusi wote, huoni kama umewafeli Wakenya? Na Wakenya wamenituma nije nikuulize, kwa sababu ya idadi hii, basi unapaswa kuwaomba msamaha leo kabla kujibu swali lolote la Shakahola mbele ya wanahabari hawa. Unaweza kuomba msamaha wa Kenya kwa kupoteza nyoyo 200 na wengine 600 hawajulikani waliko?
pale kuna utepetevu katika upande wetu wa serikali, na inapaswa mimi niombe msamaha, kwa sababu Wakenya 210 tayari wamepatikana katika makaburi. Tuko na shirika la upelelezi, tuko na shirika la ujasusi, tuko na askari polisi, tuko na assistant chief, tuko na wazee wa nyumba 10, tuko na wale wote ambao wako kule. Hapo kumetokea makosa, na siwezi kusema ya kwamba kuna vile tunaweza kukwepa lawama. Tuko na makosa, na kwa sababu kuna makosa, ni vizuri tuwaombe Wakenya msamaha kwamba jambo hili lilitendeka tukiwa na serikali. Nikishasema hivyo, huyu bwana Mackenzie na wenzake alishajulikana kwamba kuna jambo lenye dosari anafanya. Ameshikwa, akapelekwa kotini, kotini ikamwachilia. Ameshikwa tena, akapelekwa kotini, kotini wamemwachilia. Hii safari sasa ameachiliwa, ndio amekuja sasa akaongoza haya maovu akitumia dini, ambaye nilisema leo huyu bwana ni muhalifu kiwango ya gaidi, kwa sababu wale watu maisha ya watu amewaua kwa kutumia dini. Hatuwezi kuelewa ni vipi, lakini nimeambia taifa ya kwamba hii jambo, na ndio nimeweka jopo mara mbili. Jambo la kwanza nimeweka jopo ambayo tunaita Judicial Commission, ifuatilie uhalifu na ituambie ni nani alizembea kazini ndio haya mambo yakatokea, na huyu bwana washirika wake ni nani, haya makaburi yaliendelea vipi, hii mambo yote yalitendeka vipi. Hiyo ni ya kwanza. Ya pili, nimeweka pia task force ya watu ambao wengi wao ni watu wa dini, kwa sababu dini ni mahali ambapo tunapaheshimu sana. Sisi wengine wetu ni Wakristo, tunamwamini Mungu, na tunaamini dini ni mahali ambapo watu wanakimbilia wakiwa na matatizo na mashaka. Lakini pale wahalifu na watu wenye nia mbaya na watu wa mauaji kama vile Mackenzie na wenzake wanapotumia dini, ni vipi tutazuia jambo hili lisifanyike tena katika taifa letu la Kenya? So I am not taking it lightly. I am taking responsibility that as president, this should not have happened. And certainly, some people who are responsible for this failure on the part of government will have to give an account, because it should not have happened when we have all the agencies. We have our intelligence, we have our CID, we have the chiefs, and all the other people in the whole of that ecosystem. We should not have allowed this. This kind of thing should never have happened. But it has happened. We have to take responsibility.
No.
Yeah? And the promise that I am giving to the people of Kenya is that we will get to the bottom of this matter.
Okay.
And I am also giving them my commitment. I know there are people who are jittery about. They are saying we should not regulate the church, and that is correct. We should not regulate the church. No. The same way we should not regulate the media. No. Let us have an institution that self-regulates. No. We want to establish from our religious leaders, how can they, as religious leaders, agree on a mechanism that makes sure that criminals and crooks do not take advantage of religion and of faith to be able to cause harm to Kenya.
Mheshimiwa Rais, kabla ya kakangu kuuliza swali, umezungumza na napenda nikupongeze na kukuhongera kwa kuomba msamaha mbele ya Wakenya, lakini Waswahili wanasema ada ya mja hunena, lakini muungwana ni kitendo. Wana Malindi hadi leo wanalia kwamba idadi ya watu 200 kupotea, huja kanyaga guu pale kwenda kusema nao kuomba msamaha. Kiongozi wa upinzani Raila Odinga alikwenda kule na akafungiwa kuingia, na wengi wakasema afadhali huyu ametukumbuka, rais hajafika. Huu ungwana wako uko wapi hapa, Mheshimiwa Rais?
Hiyo ni siasa. Kwenda pale kwa kiongozi wa upinzani inasaidia nini? Yeye si mjazusi, yeye si askari, yeye si daktari, hajaenda kufanya ile kazi ya kutoa miili. Ameenda kufanya nini? Askari walisema pale kwa sasa ni crime scene. Yeah? Wale ambao wanatakikana pale kwa sasa ni wale watu ambao wanahitajika katika hiyo shughuli. Wale watu wataenda kufanya forensic work, wale madaktari, wale wapelelezi ndio wako pale. Wakishamaliza ile kazi, yeah, ndio tutapata nafasi, wakishamaliza ile kazi ambayo inaambatana na sehemu yao kama professionals wa hiyo field. Ndio sababu hata yule bwana aliambiwa, bwana, hapa ni kuna wenye wanakubaliwa kuja hapa kwa sasa. Lakini tumezoea kama Wakenya kila jambo siasa. Unajua sasa mimi nimekuja hapa. Kama huna ya kufanya pale unaenda kufanya nini? You know? Kwa sasa mimi nimechukua nafasi yangu, nimetuma kila mtu. Waziri wangu ambaye ni wa usalama ako pale every 2-3 days he's there.
Lakini pia wote kwenda
make sure pale mambo ya hayo yote yatakuwa yamemalizika, the place has been declared it's no longer a crime scene, I will go to Malindi.
Okay. Na Mheshimiwa Rais, kutokana na uzito wa swala hili la maafa ya Shakahola ambayo kwa kiasi kikubwa sasa yamekuwa gumzo, uliyataja maafa haya sawa na ugaidi ama sawa na tukio la ugaidi. Hata kusema kwamba ni sawa na tukio la ugaidi, uliyasema kwamba huu ni ugaidi. Lakini kulingana jinsi mnavyoendesha taratibu hizi za kuchunguza na mashtaka, hamuonekani kuyapatia uzito ambao unaendana na swala la ugaidi.
Kwa nini? DPP amekuwa pale, DCI amekuwa pale, mkubwa waziri mwenyewe amekuwa pale. We have close to, I think, 150 different officers in Malindi. In fact, we transferred all the other officers from Malindi, the ones that were there before, so that we have a clear picture of what to do in that scene of crime. So we have taken it as seriously as it would get. I think my Minister for Interior has been there 5 or 6 times. I have told you he's there every 2 or 3 days. Doesn't that show, doesn't that tell you we take it seriously? I have also appointed a Judicial Commission of Inquiry. I have also appointed a task force to look into all the matters so that we are not only looking at the crime itself. Okay. We have men there doing that. We are also looking at accountability, because that is what the Judicial Commission of Inquiry is going to come with. And we are also looking at how do we prevent this from happening again by appointing a task force. Okay. So if there is something in the level of seriousness, yes, Mr. President, we have taken it very seriously.
Mr. President, just to be clear on this, tonight you have mentioned my fellow countrymen and women.
Yes.
On many occasions.
Yes.
Your fellow countrymen and women, the Kenyan people, want to understand why the government has locked out the media in Shakahola. Question number 2, because the media has been locked out, your fellow countrymen and women want questions answered. Because you're the commander-in-chief and you get raw intelligence and briefings every morning here at State House. What exactly is the true picture of Shakahola?
If it was meant for the media, you know, Abdi, even if you went to Shakahola, would you go and film the graves and bodies that are disintegrated and take it to the people of Kenya? Would you do that as a responsible journalist?
There are ethics that guide us. We can't do that.
Yes.
But why the blanket?
There is absolutely,
media blackout?
There is absolutely the sin that is there is not a sin to report. Yeah? The sin that is there is not a sin to report. And my friend, what would be there to hide about graves and dead people? Surely.
Tell us the true picture now. Because you get the intelligence, isn't it?
I get the intelligence.
And you label yourself as
But do you know why there is intelligence?
Yes.
There is intelligence because there is a limit as to how far you can go with intelligence. If intelligence was meant for the media, it wouldn't be intelligence.
Okay, not the media per se. It's the Kenyan people want answers.
But you are the media.
Hang on, Mr. President.
There is a way I am going to communicate to the Kenyan people when the time comes.
It's through us, the professionals in the media. That's why here we are tonight. You speak to the Kenyan people about a raft of issues. Now, the Kenyan people want to understand the concerns that they have about Shakahola. Can't you tell them, the sovereign people of the Republic of Kenya, about the truth?
When the time comes for me to speak about Shakahola, I will to the people of Kenya.
When is that going to be?
As it is, the people of Kenya will get information from the officers on the ground to the extent that that information can be shared. But it is not fair and it is not right, Abdi, for you to tell me that I come and broadcast intelligence information. You know that's not possible.
Probably,
even if you try how.
Mr. President, I just want to ask you this. You receive intelligence briefs, like my colleague Ayub says. We've seen people in this country being profiled on the basis of their religion. I have to ask you this, Mr. President, and I'm sure Kenyans would want to know. You've admitted that there was some complacency from security organs. Had this been done by another denomination, would we be talking about the same thing?
Yes, we would. I have always refused the blanket condemnation of any religion. That is why when, for example, Alamin Kimathi was profiled and taken to as a terrorist and taken to Uganda, I am the one who went to speak to Museveni because I know Alamin Kimathi. And it is me going to talk to him. And Alamin Kimathi is a Muslim. I received him here at the airport after he was released. Because we must not allow, the same way I will not also agree that this incident is used against all the churches and all the religion. We must treat this, as I said today, as a terrorist, as a criminal, and he bears individual responsibility. But beyond that, because the name of religion has been used, that's why I have taken the extra step to ask religious leaders. We do not want another incident of this nature. So let us speak to ourselves. Let the church, let the religious bodies, let the Muslims sit down as religious leaders and come up with a self-regulation mechanism, the same way you guys in the media have a self-regulation mechanism, so that you avoid, because there are rogue journalists. True or not true?
Yes, they are.
They extort money, they do what, and they are reported to the Media Council, your organization, and their steps are taken, right? So we're asking that should be from where I sit. But I am waiting for their recommendation. If they tell me there is a different way of doing it, I will look at it. That's why.
Rais, pengine uzungumze na Mkenya, manake hili ni swala ambalo tulishuhudia wakati ambapo watu walikuwa wakiokolewa pale. Kuna wale hata walikuwa wanakataa, wanasema ya kwamba wanataka kuniua, kumaanisha ya kwamba swala la dini na siasa ni mojawapo yale masuala ambayo yanafahamika kama emotive issues. Zungumza tu na Mkenya kuhusiana na umuhimu wa kuwa macho zaidi anapofuata hata dini fulani.
Nataka niwaeleze ndugu zangu wa Kenya, tafadhali tuwe waangalifu. Kuna mafundisho ambayo yanaelekea mahali ambapo si pazuri. Ukisikia dini inaanza kusema usiende hospitali, usipeleke watoto wako shule, sijui dunia inaisha, sijui miezi 6, sijui miezi 2, ujue pale kuna kasoro. Ukisikia mtu anakuambia uza mali yako upeleke pesa kwake, ndio upate sijui barabara gani ya kwenda sijui mahali gani, kuzimu sijui mbinguni. Yeah? Lazima tuwe waangalifu so that as the citizens of the Republic of Kenya, it is very, very important for us to know that radicalization of whatever nature, radicalization in terrorism, radicalization using religion, radicalization using politics is dangerous because it leads people to make irrational decisions. And we must always be careful. Right. And that is why I have said, because this incident is serious, I would want to listen to religious leaders, religious professionals to tell us how do we make sure that Kenyans, innocent Kenyans, are not radicalized using pulpits or religious doctrine, because what the likes of Mackenzie are doing is what Al-Shabaab are doing. One using the Bible, the other one using the Quran. And we must deal with that situation because it is a real situation, and we must deal with it.
Mr. President, just as we wrap this up, you've admitted that, yes, there was complacency. 600 people missing. That's a huge number. Someone somewhere must have known. What degree of complacency are we talking about? And are we going to see heads rolling?
Oh, yeah, because, and that is why I have a judicial, because the Judicial Commission of Inquiry will put people to account. The chief will have to account. The intelligence officer will have to account. The CID officer will have to account. Or the whole chain has to account. So people will be held to account because this is not a simple matter.
Thank you, sir. I want to take us back to, an issue that is of great public importance and interest, and this is with regards to the cost of living. Like you said, this is a hot issue, a hot potato issue. You have said, and you've been saying this recently, that before you took office, the cost of unga was at a certain price, beyond 200 bob. And since then, it has actually been coming down, and it's come down to the latest figure I heard you mention yesterday was about 170 shillings. Where is this 170 bob unga? And what specific interventions of your government are you crediting for that?
What did we do? To sort out the cost of living issue, there are two things. Increase production. That's why we're working with the farmers to increase production. We're supporting farmers with fertilizer, seeds, and as I told you, 200,000 additional acres of land have been put into production. So that's number one. Number two, increase supply at the moment. That is why we have imported close to 250,000 tons of maize. We have imported about 75,000 tons of rice. We have imported, I don't know the numbers, maybe 40,000, because I even had to speak to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia because they had some beans. We have had to import about 100,000 tons of cooking oil. These are the interventions different from my former friends who went and gave money to millers and spent 8 billion shillings. To import all this maize, it is not going to cost us anything because we are just increasing the supply, cost for cost, right?
As at the end of April,
we on the short term, we will have to increase supply through importation. On the long term, we will increase supply using production. That is how to deal with the cost of living. And by the way, I spoke about it with clarity during the campaigns. I promised the people of Kenya we are going to reduce the cost of fertilizer. I have reduced it from 7,000 to 3,500.
I'm on the current, not on the future, not on the
now. I'm telling you now.
On the 27th
fertilizer at the moment.
The Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture was meeting with the people that he had given license to import. And he was reading them the Riot Act. He said, as of now, I am not even sure which of you has imported the maize and who hasn't. The figures from the Ministry of Agriculture as at the end of April was that 90,000 metric tons of maize had been imported, not 250, like you've said. It was 90,000 as at then. And in fact, the CS was telling the importers, I want you to come and give me a list of what you've imported. So it's clear that the Ministry of Agriculture is not aware of how much has
let me
or is not in control of how much is coming.
Let me give you the numbers. The Ministry of Agriculture gave importers. When I realized that the importers were not getting very far, I looked for millers and I sat with them here. I told them, you are the people in this business. Can you reach out to your suppliers whenever you don't have? That's how the Ministry of Agriculture brought in the millers. It was because of that frustration, because the people that had been given the license to import failed to import. So we had to take the second queue. And I want to tell you, we have very patriotic millers, who have worked with us now. They have imported, the one I know directly, 100,000 metric tons. They have on the way another 100,000 metric tons. I don't know how far since those numbers were released the ministry has gone with the other millers, with the other importers. So we had to use a double-pronged approach, because when you find that one is not working, you have to think.
How much more do you need to do to bring the price below 150 to 100?
That you can only
achieve. In the short term?
No, there is no short term. You cannot do it on short term. You have to be realistic, because the cost of maize worldwide, because of the dollar situation, is high. The only sure way, my good friend Latif, the only sure way to reduce the cost of living, to reduce the cost of food, is through production.
And production, he has a question.
Yes, tell me about it.
Well, Mr. President, there's a survey that was done by the Central Bank of Kenya that shows only 29% of farmers have received the government-subsidized fertilizer. We're talking about over 70% of Kenyan farmers who've not been able to get subsidized fertilizer. We also have issues of decentralization. Some farmers have to travel for long distances. For instance, from, let's say, Embu all the way to Kitale, fertilizer.
That's not true. My friend, that's not true.
It is true. It is true.
No. There is no farmer from Embu that goes to Kitale. Please, Eric, please. No. Your story is fake. It's not true.
Mr. President, though, 70% of farmers are yet to get the government-subsidized fertilizer. What do you make of that?
That statistic is wrong. Yeah. I have the numbers.
How many?
And I monitor the numbers. By, I think yesterday, actually I have it on my phone. I monitor every day. It is on an app. It is not possible for anybody to lie to me.
What percentage?
By yesterday, we had done 2.7 million. Yeah? Actually, farmers had paid by yesterday 9 billion, meaning we had almost spent about 6 billion of government money on fertilizer subsidy. And by the way, it is the first time, and I want you to bring a farmer on TV to say that they didn't get subsidized fertilizer and that they had to travel from Embu to Kitale to get fertilizer.
Na Mheshimiwa Rais, tuzungumzie hili la siasa kidogo. Hiyo jana ulionekana kinara wa muungano wa Azimio Raila Odinga katika mazishi ya Mukami Kimathi, na baadaye mkakuwa pamoja katika uwanja wa Kasarani katika mashindano haya ya Kipkeno Classic, na mlishiriki jukwaa moja mkakosoana kwa heshima. Lakini wanasiasa wa pande zote mbili, serikali Kenya Kwanza na upande wa muungano wa Azimio, wanapokuwa katika majukwaa na wafuasi wao wanadhihirisha cheche, na baadhi ya wafuasi wanachukulia hili kama swala la uadui. Utawaambia nini? Na zaidi pia ulisema kwamba unajua hatma ya maandamano ya Raila Odinga. Je, umeanza kuishughulikia hiyo hatma?
Kwanza pale tulikutana ni mahala pa mazishi. na ni kawaida kama viongozi, kwa sababu lile jambo ni jambo ambalo linatufaa sote tushughulikie, na ilikuwa ni nafasi nzuri ya pia kuzungumzia mambo yaliyoko katika taifa letu la Kenya. Pale kiongozi wa upinzani alisema vile aliona, akasema punda amechoka, akasema mimi siambiwi ukweli, ushuru nisipandishe, na mimi pia nikachukua muda nimueleze, na akasema ananijua, na ni kweli kwa sababu nimefanya kazi na yeye, tulikuwa pamoja katika chama. Pia nikachukua hiyo nafasi kusema pia vile ananijua na mimi namuelewa. Pia na kumsoma. Yeah. So, ikawa ni nafasi nzuri yeye aseme na mimi pia nikasema. Na pale pia nilipata nafasi ya kueleza wananchi wa Kenya kwamba hili propaganda, serikali hii tu kazi yake ni kuongeza ushuru, ni kuongeza ushuru. Nikamweleza tumepunguza ushuru zaidi ya ile tumeongeza. Tumeondoa bilioni 15, bilioni 500 ambayo ingekuwa katika budget kama wao ndio wangeendesha serikali. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa mambo ya fertilizer, raw material. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa mambo ya clinker, kwa simiti. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa samaki. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa mambo ya furniture. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa mambo ya mahospitali, equipment ya hospitali. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa chuma na simiti, kwa sababu tunataka kukuza manufacturing yetu. Tumeondoa ushuru katika sehemu karibu 15. So sio kweli hii porojo inaendeshwa na wenzetu wa upinzani wakisaidiwa na vyombo vya habari kwamba serikali hii inaendesha tu mambo ya kuongeza ushuru. Sio kweli bana.
Na utawaambia nini vijana ambao ni wafuasi wenu kutoka pande zote mbili, upande wa Kenya Kwanza na upande wa Azimio, ambao wanachukulia tofauti zenu za kisiasa kama uadui ama swala la kufa kupona?
Tofauti za siasa ni tofauti ya maoni na tofauti ya sera. Nilimweleza ule ndugu yangu, na namheshimu kwa sababu ni mzee, namheshimu kwa sababu ni kiongozi. Nikamweleza kwa heshima ya kwamba wewe unaamini kusubsidize consumption, ambayo ni njia moja, lakini kwangu mimi ni njia bure. Mimi naamini kwa kusubsidize production. Ndio tofauti, maoni tofauti. Lakini baada ya ile mkutano, si tulikuwa pamoja Kasarani, tukaendesha, tukaona riadha ikiendelea.
Na naibu wa rais hakuwa pale Kasarani.
Leo tukakuwa pale.
Mlifanya mazungumzo yote ya kando kuhusu masuala ya kitaifa?
Tulikuwa hapo
Hamkuzungumza chochote kuhusu?
Wacheni fitina bwana.
Mr. President,
uwepo wako na ukaribu wako,
msisome mambo ambayo hayako.
Uwepo wako,
zungumza chochote kuhusu mazungumzo kati ya serikali na Kenya Kwanza na Azimio?
Wewe unasema my deputy hakuwa Kasarani.
Ni huyo amesema.
Ni mimi ndiye niliyesema.
Sasa nakuuliza wewe, alikuwa amekuambia atakuwa Kasarani? Ndio ukasema mbona aliniambia atakuja Kasarani?
Picha iliyotamba mtandaoni na inazungumziwa na Wakenya kwamba ukaribu wako
naibu wangu wa rais alikuwa na shughuli Nyeri.
Na Raila Odinga.
Sasa ulikuwa unataka aje Kasarani afanye nini? Na alikuwa na shughuli Nyeri.
Okay, Mr. President.
Je, kuna tokota mkono wa heri wa handshake kati yako na Raila Odinga? Waona jana na hata leo.
Allow me, Mr. President, to get to the substance element of that conversation in Nyandarua County yesterday. And you premised your government on growing the revenue streams and scaling down on borrowing. That's what you campaigned on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I am spot on.
Okay. Allow me to quote this Treasury data, which shows between October and April, that is last year until April the previous month. Treasury data shows that the new administration, the Kenya Kwanza administration, tapped into loans worth 425 billion Kenya shillings, which is more than 434.6 billion that the Jubilee government borrowed in the same period when it came to power in 2013. You are therefore above by what Uhuru borrowed at the same period by 17.4 billion Kenya shillings. Why the contradictory position?
Yeah, it's not contradictory.
Why borrow more?
The budget, my friend, we are using is Uhuru's budget. The budget you will hold me to account is the one we are discussing. You know, when you have a budget in place, even if you came into office today, unless you go to Parliament to change the way the budget is funded, you can't. They had budgeted to borrow in that budget. They had budgeted to borrow 1.1 trillion. I came using the supplementary budget. I cut it down by 300 billion, right? But you see, the train had left the station. So the borrowing was more because in the budget that was read and passed by Parliament, it was meant to be more. All I did is that it wasn't as big as they had anticipated. They had actually wanted to borrow $1.1 trillion.
Your Excellency,
which
the
I cut down.
Budget deficit, as at June last year, for the current financial year, the budget deficit that had been approved by Parliament was 833 billion shillings. Of course, the Uhuru administration was there.
That was a false number, because when we came into office, we found that they had not factored about 130 billion of pending bills. They had not factored almost 90 billion that was meant to be given to counties. They were hiding figures. And that is why I want to run a transparent government. I want to run a government that's accountable. I want my minister and my administration to be asked questions. And that is why I believe in accountability, and I want an opposition that will hold the government to account. And that is why I am against the handshake. Because in a handshake situation, there is no accountability. That is how a government can hide borrowing the way it was hidden in the last budget.
What then will you tell the people? If I look at just the figures of the deficits and how much it keeps fluctuating, at the beginning of a financial year, there is what the National Treasury takes to Parliament, and it's approved as a budget and a deficit. And if I look throughout the year, it always gets adjusted halfway through or midway through the year. 2014-2015, the approved deficit was 417 billion shillings. By the end of the financial year, it had risen to 533 billion shillings, a jump of 28%. If I just go into another one, 2018-2019, the approved deficit was 608 billion shillings. It jumped to 734, 21% jump in deficit. This time, you're going to Parliament seeking a deficit of 664 billion shillings and saying, I want to borrow and stay within this. Are you telling the people of Kenya that the Kenya Kwanza administration in the first year will not go back to Parliament and seek to borrow more than 664 billion?
Let me first explain why when government says we are going to have this deficit, sometimes they have to borrow more because what they had anticipated to collect, they could not collect. Correct. That's why collection is very important, number one. Number two, sometimes the measures they want to use to raise the revenue, sometimes they don't pass in Parliament. So if a certain measure that was supposed to raise 20 billion does not pass, then you have 20 billion short. Then you have to borrow to cover that 20 billion. So that's why sometimes it has to change. I want to tell you, I will do my very best, by God's grace. If Parliament approves my budget the way it is, I will, to the extent possible, make sure that I live to the commitment I have made to make this budget, the deficit, to come down from the current 5.7 to 4.4. And I want to move it further next year. I have said we are better off, building our own resources, using our own taxes. And I have told the people of Kenya, let us be honest to ourselves. We are not overtaxing ourselves. Our taxes are 16% of GDP. Our peers, South Africa, Tunisia, Morocco, and the others, they are at 22, 25, 28% of GDP. If we have to measure up our public goods, if we have to build the roads, if we have to get our education up to standard, if we have to get our health and water and all the other public goods up to standard, we have to pay taxes we have to agree which areas, can we stimulate so that we do more manufacturing, we do more value addition. By the way, part of the reason why we are in this hole is because our manufacturing came down, from 9% of GDP to 7%. I want to move it to 15%. By the way, our exports as a percentage of GDP came down from 28% 8 years ago to 10% this year. We just stopped exporting. That's why, if you look at the budget this year, we have introduced export and investment promotion levy on goods that can be manufactured in Kenya. Whether it is cement, we have enough capacity to manufacture. Whether it is clinker, we have enough to manufacture. Furniture, steel. Where we have enough capacity to manufacture responsibly as a country, we must stop importation. We must have,
from Kenya.
that is why, if you look at my whole budget, I am doing two things. Where we cannot avoid, we raise taxes that are paid by the majority of Kenyans, like VAT on fuel. What we have also done, we have reduced RDL, Railway Development Levy, from 3.5% to 2.5%. We have reduced IDF, import declaration fee, from 2% to 1.5%. We have also reduced many other taxes because I am sensitive that we have to be careful how we tax. We must tax responsibly.
Yeah.
It is possible for us to move our tax as a percentage of GDP from 14 to 16%, as I am proposing in the budget, responsibly. We can balance out. That's why we are removing tax on gas. We are adding tax here because we want to balance. And we want to make sure that everybody, for example, let me give you another example. We have reinstated before COVID. Turnover tax was 3%. During COVID, it was taken to 1%. We have reinstated it because COVID is behind us. Because we want also the people in the micro and small enterprise space to pay a little bit of tax. This tax cannot be paid for by a few people. We want to spread it. The same thing, we have also enhanced what we call advanced tax. The tax you pay for your car, for my car, for all these vehicles we are driving, from 3,000, which was put in 2010, now 12 years later, my friend Lati, we've increased the number of roads. We have increased our bill on roads. We've increased it from 3,000 to 5,000 per year. So these are measures, and so we want everybody to carry a bit of the tax. But we have reduced tax on pharmaceutical manufacture. We have reduced tax on manufacture of building products, building materials, so that we can also grow our
Mr.
local.
President, the main concern also accompanying all this is a concern from Kenyans from what they see the government doing, which is what Lofty had asked earlier, the government appearing to spend excessively. How do you back on the excesses of the government? Your own economic advisor, David Day, has said it publicly. He's gotten into government and he's seeing there's excessive. And
David is speaking the truth, and that is why we have cut down on unnecessary expenditure. That's why we were able to reduce the budget by 300 billion. That's why in this year's budget, we've been able to reduce from, instead of borrowing 1.1 trillion like the former regime, we are now going to bring it down to 600, those numbers you read, 660 something. So we are responsible. Okay. You're telling me you increased 90 million that was borrowed by State House. Yes. What used to happen? The office of the deputy president has been shut. So if you have to reinstate the operations of the office of the deputy president, when I was there, what happened? The office was, I was paying from my own pocket fuel for my cars. I was paying for tea in my office. I was paying for allowances for my drivers and everybody. It was not fair. But you see, I respect my deputy. I want my deputy to run his show. And I want my deputy to work in an office that works. My deputy is very busy. Today, he can hardly have time. He is permanently in the office because I have assigned him responsibilities. For example, I assigned him the responsibility of making sure that no Kenyan dies. He was sitting on it with development partners, with other Kenyans, and no Kenyan died because of kukosa chakula. Because when you get people to help you work becomes easier and work becomes better.
Mheshimiwa Rais, swali hili la nyongeza ya milioni 93 katika Ikulu mimi nimeliuliza na linafungamana na matumizi haswa ya ugatuzi. Na Wakenya wamejiuliza haswa Wakenya wa matabaka ya chini, pia viongozi haswa maseneta katika mrengo wa upinzani kwamba je, Rais, wewe ni adui wa ugatuzi ama unaunga mkono ugatuzi, ikitegemewa kwamba ni maseneta wako ambao waliangusha pendekezo hili la tume ya mgao wa ushuru CRA kuongeza mgao hadi bilioni 4.7 wakapitisha naam 407. Na katika hali hiyo, je, unaona wewe unaunga mkono ugatuzi? Manake katika Ikulu unaweza ongeza milioni 93 tu katika kipindi cha wiki moja ikipitishwa, lakini fedha kwenda katika kaunti hakuna, mpaka zinapunguzwa. Unaunga mkono ugatuzi ama ni adui wa ugatuzi?
Mimi ni rafiki mkubwa sana wa ugatuzi.
Basi mbona
na waulize magavana wetu. Wananielewa vizuri sana. Na nataka nikueleze, nilizungumza na magavana wetu nikawaambia, my friends, siwezi nikaenda nikakopa tukuje tugawane. Hapana, hiyo siwezi kufanya. Hivyo ndio tulikuwa tunataka tufanye. Hapana. Nikawaambia tugawane ile ushuru tumeokota. Ile ya kuenda kwa sababu mwaka uliopita iliisha mwaka kama tuko na deni ya karibu bilioni 90 pesa ya makaunti. Mimi ndio nimekuja kuilipia. Na ni kwa sababu tulijidanganya, tukawaambia tutawapatia pesa kiasi hii. Haikupatikana hiyo pesa. Ikabidi ivuke iende mwaka unaofuata. So mimi nimewaambia safari hii, ndugu zangu, budget nimepunguza borrowing, ile mikopo kutoka karibu trilioni 1 mpaka milioni 600. Kila mmoja wetu akaze mshipi. Yeah? Sisi tutakaza mshipi upande wa serikali ya kitaifa na kila mtu. Na ndio sababu tulikubaliana na wao pesa ambazo tutagawanya kwa counties ni bilioni 385.
Kwa hivyo uliwashawishi maseneta wako kuangusha
ile pendekezo? Sio maseneta, niliwashawishi magavana.
Lakini pendekezo ile liliangushwa pale wakati wa kupiga kura. Je, kulikuwa na mkono wako kwamba wale maseneta wanaogemea upande wa Kenya Kwanza waangushe?
Wale maseneta ni viongozi. Wako na akili. Ndio walichaguliwa. Ile kazi ni kazi yao. Lakini wale wananisaidia kazi ya kuendesha serikali. Kwa sababu mimi na wao tulichaguliwa upande mmoja. Mimi na wao tuliuza sera pamoja na wao. Kwa sababu ni viongozi wa Kenya Kwanza na wanaelewa mpango wetu. Na wanaelewa budget yetu. Na wanaelewa kiasi ya pesa tuliyoko nayo. Na mimi nataka nikuulize, kwani wale magavana hawatoki kwa kaunti? Kuna gavana wazimu hataki pesa iende kwa kaunti yake. Lakini you have to be realistic. You live within your means.
Lakini magavana wao hao wamekuwa kilia kucheleweshwa kwa pesa, mishahara na kadhalika.
Na ndio nimesema, as decent, responsible people and leaders, we cannot live beyond our means. We have to be brutally honest with ourselves. What is possible and what is not possible. And I have sat down. I am the only president who has taken a lot of time. I have sat down with governors for 2 days. We have agreed on what we are going to do. We have agreed on joint plans. In fact, we have agreed with the governors that we are going to co-invest, just to show you the level of comradeship between my administration and the governors. We are going to jointly sponsor county, aggregation, and industrial parks. I have put 5 billion shillings in the budget to support that county function because I want to reduce post-harvest losses. I want to bring on board value addition because that will happen if there is a partnership between the counties, agriculture is devolved, they will work and aggregate because the power of aggregation helps us to provide storage, therefore we minimize post-harvest losses. It also gives us an opportunity to create volume where we can market. And number three, it gives us an ecosystem for us to value add so that we can take it forward. And by the way, in those, just let me finish. In those county aggregation and industrial parks, we have also linked them to commodity exchange and warehouse receipting so that counties can be linked. So that, because the problem we normally have is there is plenty in one corner of the country and there is scarcity in another corner of the country. And in between, there is no mechanism of how do you make sure that you close the gap between where you are, in another corner, food is going to waste because it is too much and it cannot be absorbed. On another corner, people are dying or people are hungry because they didn't have food. So commodity exchange and warehouse receipting is going to link the county aggregation and industrial.
I have a direct question on that, Mr. President. So 385 billion shillings is the proposal to go to counties as revenue share. And then there's the extra conditional grants at 44 billion shillings.
Correct.
Foreign finance projects at 33 billion shillings. County industrial parks at 4.7 billion shillings.
Exactly.
Medical equipment scheme at 5.9 billion shillings. County headquarters, 454 million shillings. And some money coming from the judiciary, 108 million shillings. It comes to 429.7 billion. Now, all the others that I've mentioned sound like the national government giving money to the counties to do the national government's work. Why not give counties 429 billion shillings to determine where they want to invest their money?
It is the nature of the law. The law provides some of those resources come from development partners, and we negotiate with development partners. Sometimes it is we have to receive the money as national government because sometimes development partners cannot go and sign 47 agreements. They prefer to sign one agreement with the national government on the understanding that this money will be passed to the counties. So it is just an accounting government procedure that dictates that some of the time we do that. Some of the grants, is exactly what I was telling you.
Yep.
We are providing 5 billion shillings. 4.7 billion, the one you have read, will go to the county. In fact, that's a county function. It's not a national government function.
Exactly.
I am supporting the counties to do what they are supposed to do. But I am telling them, I am not giving you extra money, because I have an interest in the county aggregation and industrial park. Because I want to make sure, because sometimes you send the money to a particular county and they go and decide to do something else. They go pay salary, they go for a trip to where, so that we don't want.
They are accountable.
They are accountable.
They
Precisely.
have their own means of accountability.
Precisely.
You should not be determining what they do with the money. Send the money to them. The Senate will discuss the county allocation of revenue
Latif,
and pass it.
that's not how it works.
According to the formula by CRA, the money goes to the counties.
That's not how it works.
Why do you want, Mr. President, the national government to determine what projects are going to be done by functions that are devolved?
We have already agreed in advance. We have already agreed. And by the way, I was here with the chair, Anu Waiguru, and her deputy, the governor of Wajir. Day before yesterday, I think, I was here with them. And they came for us to agree what is the procurement model of that particular exercise. And I told them the county will procure. Let the county, every county should procure the county aggregation, how it is going to be built. All we have agreed with them. The same way we agreed on the design of all our Tibet institutions. We have agreed on one design for the county aggregation. For what purpose? Number one, for standardization. Number two, to avoid another architect going to charge sijui 20 million because they have gone to some place. And so we are approving one generic